Warlord Krex Talon stood on his gleaming observation deck, 4 arms crossed in what he considered a pose of supreme authority. His crystalline exoskeleton caught the artificial light of Nexus Prime's combat arena, casting rainbow reflections across the polished floor. Below him, the gladiator pit stretched out like a metallic crater, surrounded by thousands of alien spectators who had paid good credits to witness what they believed would be the most one-sided slaughter in galactic history. Ladies, gentlemen, and assorted sentient beings. Krex Talon's voice boomed through the station's amplification system, his mandibles clicking with barely contained amusement. Today we present something truly special, a creature from the infamous Deathworld known as Terra, a human. The crowd erupted in a mixture of excited chittering, mechanical whirring, and what could only be described as interstellar laughter. To them, this was comedy gold. A human? One of those soft, pink, pathetically weak bipeds? Oh, this was going to be good. Krex Talon's compound eyes focused on the small figure huddled in the corner of the preparation chamber. Maya Torres, according to the shipping manifest, though her name meant nothing to him. What did matter was her size. She couldn't be more than 5.5 feet tall, maybe 130 pounds soaking wet. Her brown hair hung in limp strands around her face, and her dark eyes darted nervously around the chamber like a trapped animal. Look at her, Krex Talon muttered to his aide, a spider-like creature named Vorthak. She's already terrified, and she hasn't even seen my warriors yet. This is almost too easy. Vorthak's mandibles clicked in agreement. The betting pools are heavily favored toward our champions, my lord. The longest odds are 30 seconds for the human's survival. Most are betting on less than 10. 10 seconds. Krex Talon's laughter sounded like grinding metal. Generous. Very generous. He gestured toward the 3 towering figures waiting in the champion's alcove. First was Vorthak, an 8-foot mountain of muscle and armor plating. His species, the Gorlaxians, were bred for war. Enhanced bone density, redundant organs, and natural armor that could deflect energy weapons. Vorthak's 4 arms ended in claws that could tear through hull plating, and his mechanical enhancements included targeting systems that could track a fly in a hurricane. Next stood Sil'neth, the pride of the Eltari Assassin Guild. Where Vorthak was brute force, Sil'neth was elegant lethality. Her elongated limbs moved with liquid grace, enhanced by neural accelerators that allowed her to process information at superhuman speeds. Her weapons were works of art, energy blades that could cut through molecular bonds, throwing stars that could home in on targets from across the arena. Finally, there was Gorthul, the psychic warrior of the Zeph-Tiri collective. His bulbous head pulsed with barely contained mental energy, and his third eye glowed with an inner light that could paralyze opponents with fear. Gorthul didn't need weapons, he could stop a heart with a thought, or drive an enemy insane with whispered nightmares. 3 of the finest warriors in the galaxy, Krex Talon announced to his audience. Each one a master of combat, enhanced by the finest technology our civilizations can provide. And their opponent? He paused for dramatic effect. Single human female. No enhancements. No weapons, no chance. The crowd was eating it up. Credits were changing hands at a frantic pace as alien aristocrats placed their bets. Some were wagering on which champion would deliver the killing blow. Others were betting on creative methods of execution. A few particularly morbid souls were placing odds on how many pieces the human would be in when it was over. Meanwhile, Maya Torres sat in her corner, appearing to shake with fear. Her hands trembled as she wrapped her arms around her knees, and her breathing seemed rapid and shallow. To any observer, she looked exactly like what she was supposed to be, a terrified primitive from a backwater world completely out of her depth. What the aliens didn't notice was the way her eyes moved. They weren't darting around in panic, they were calculating, measuring distances, noting the texture of the arena floor, the height of the walls, the positioning of the gravity generators. She was cataloging every detail, every potential advantage, every possible weakness in her opponents. But to Krex Talon and his guests, she was just a scared little monkey, about to provide them with some premium entertainment. Let the games begin. Krex Talon roared, and the arena erupted in cheers. Maya Torres stood up slowly, still maintaining her act of terror, and walked toward the center of the pit. She had work to do. Vorthak descended into the arena with all the ceremony of a conquering god. His massive frame was adorned with ritual scarification that told the story of 100 victories, each mark glowing faintly with bioluminescent ink. His ceremonial weapons were works of art, a plasma maul that hummed with contained energy, and an energy shield that projected a shimmering barrier of pure force. Behold! Krex Talon's voice rang out over the arena. Vorthak the undefeated, champion of the Gorlaxian death pits, winner of 73 consecutive battles. The crowd went wild. Tentacles waved, claws clicked, and various alien throat equivalents cheered in languages that sounded like grinding machinery and dying star systems. Look at the size difference, chittered Lady Zephnina, a mantis-like aristocrat whose betting slip was already filled out. The human barely reaches his chest plate. Primitive mammalian biology, agreed Lord Hexturon, adjusting his monocle with a mechanical appendage. Single heart, pathetic bone density, no natural armor. This is less a fight and more a public service announcement about staying in your own galaxy. Krex Talon leaned forward in his observation box, his compound eyes fixed on the tiny human figure. This was going to be educational. These humans needed to learn their place in the Galactic Order, and there was no better teacher than overwhelming, brutal defeat. He would record this entire spectacle and broadcast it to every human settlement in known space. A warning. A demonstration of what happened when lesser species tried to play with their betters. Vorthak. He called down to his champion. Make it last at least 20 seconds. I want the humans watching to really understand what they're dealing with. Vorthak raised his weapons in acknowledgement, his four arms moving in perfect synchronization. His targeting systems were already locked onto the human, calculating optimal strike patterns and defensive positions. This would be over before it began. Maya, for her part, was doing an excellent job of looking completely outmatched. She stumbled slightly as she tried to circle away from the massive warrior, her movements appearing jerky and uncoordinated. Her hands shook as she raised them in what looked like the galaxy's most pathetic fighting stance. "Oh, by the void," laughed Counselor Blithex, "she's trying to box him. Look at those tiny fists. What's she going to do? Give him a gentle massage." "Humans," scoffed another spectator, "I heard they still use projectile weapons." Projectile weapons. Like throwing rocks at a starship. Maya's first few steps were awkward, uncertain. She seemed to catch her foot on an imperfection in the arena floor, nearly stumbling. The crowd roared with laughter. This was even better than they'd hoped. Not only was she going to lose, she was going to look ridiculous doing it. Vorthak advanced slowly, savoring the moment. His sensors were reading elevated heart rate, increased perspiration, and all the classic signs of mammalian terror. Perfect. He raised his plasma maul, energy crackling along its surface. "Any last words, little human?" His voice was like grinding stone, amplified by his helmet speakers. Maya looked up at him, her brown eyes wide with apparent fear. I don't want to hurt you," she whispered. The arena erupted in laughter. Even Vorthak's targeting systems registered the statement as comedic rather than threatening. "Hurt me?" Vorthak's laughter boomed across the arena. "Little soft skin, you couldn't hurt me if I stood still for an hour." And that's when Maya stopped pretending to be afraid. Her posture changed in an instant. The trembling stopped. The uncertain movements became fluid. And her eyes went from wide with terror to narrow with calculation. "You know what?" she said, her voice now steady and clear. "You're probably right. So I guess I'll just have to get creative." Vorthak's targeting systems immediately recalculated. Something had changed. The human's thermal signature was different, her stance more balanced, her micro-expressions no longer registering as prey behavior. His combat algorithms flagged this as unusual. "Interesting," he rumbled, raising his plasma maul. The little mouse has found some courage. No matter. The result will be the same. He charged forward, all 800 pounds of armored muscle and enhanced bone density moving with surprising speed. His energy shield projected ahead of him, and his targeting systems locked onto Maya's center mass. A simple ram attack would crush her ribcage, and then he could finish her with them all. Clean, efficient, entertaining. Maya waited until the last possible second, then dropped into a slide that took her directly under Vorthak's shield. The move was so unexpected that his algorithms couldn't compensate in time. She rolled to the side just as his massive foot slammed down where she'd been, and the arena floor cracked under the impact. The Vorthak spun around, but Maya was already moving. She'd grabbed a handful of the arena's sand during her slide, and now she threw it directly at his helmet's sensor array. Not at his eyes, which were protected by energy shields, but at the delicate environmental sensors that fed data to his targeting systems. That's Lord Hex. Turon adjusted his monocle again. That's cheating, isn't it? Throwing dirt? It's not dirt, Lady Zephnina corrected, her mandibles clicking with confusion. It's silicate particulate, and it's not against the rules, but it's so primitive. Vorthak's sensors were recalibrating, trying to filter out the interference. During those crucial seconds, Maya had positioned herself next to one of the arena's gravity generators. These devices kept the artificial gravity at a comfortable standard for the spectators, but they also created localized fields that could be manipulated. She kicked the generator's housing, not to break it, but to shift its orientation by exactly 15 degrees. Suddenly, Vorthak found himself fighting gravity that was pulling him at an angle. His massive frame, so perfectly balanced for straight-line combat, became a liability. He stumbled, his forearms windmilling as he tried to compensate. Impossible. Krex Talon's voice cracked through the arena speakers. Those generators are magnetically locked. A human doesn't have the strength to. Maya had already moved to the next generator. Another precisely calculated kick, another shift in the local gravity field. Now Vorthak was dealing with gravitational forces pulling him in 3 different directions. This is just luck, screeched Counselor Blithex. Pure luck. There's no way a primitive species could understand our technology well enough to. Vorthak's third attempt to charge Maya ended with him face first in the arena wall. His targeting systems were completely confused now, trying to compensate for gravitational forces that kept shifting around him. Every time he moved, Maya adjusted another generator, turning the arena into a 3-dimensional maze of competing forces. Stand still and fight. Vorthak roared, swinging his plasma maul in wide arcs. Why? Maya called back, dancing between the gravitational fields like she'd been born to them. You're doing great. Really impressive technique there, eating the wall like that. The crowd was getting restless. This wasn't supposed to be happening. Their champion was supposed to be demonstrating the superiority of advanced alien combat techniques, not stumbling around like a drunk Tellurian at a mating festival. She's just running away, someone shouted from the stands. When is she going to actually fight? As if in response to the question, Maya stopped running. She stood perfectly still in the center of the arena, hands at her sides, waiting. Vorthak saw his chance. He disabled his targeting systems entirely, relying on his natural senses and combat instincts. No more technology, no more complications. Just raw power against frail flesh. He charged again, this time successfully navigating the gravitational maze. His plasma maul was raised high, energy crackling along its surface. Victory was finally within reach. Maya timed her move perfectly. At the exact moment Vorthak committed to his attack, she dropped flat to the ground. His maul passed harmlessly over her head, and his massive momentum carried him forward. Right into the arena wall. Yes, but not just any part of the wall. The exact section where Maya had been systematically adjusting the gravity generators. The combined gravitational forces, now working in perfect harmony, accelerated Vorthak's impact by roughly 300%. The sound was memorable. 800 pounds of warrior plus enhanced momentum equals one very large crater in what had previously been a perfectly good wall. Vorthak slid down the wall like a deflating balloon, his armor cracked, his weapons scattered, and his dignity in approximately the same condition as his consciousness. The arena fell silent. "Well," Maya said, brushing dust off her hands, "that was fun. Who's next?" The silence stretched on for what felt like an eternity. Somewhere in the stands, a small alien child asked its parent why the scary warrior was sleeping in the wall. The parent had no answer. Krek's Talon's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sure sign of stress among his species. This was not going according to plan. Well, not at all. His compound eyes fixed on Sil'neth, who stood motionless in the champion's alcove, her elongated form coiled like a spring. "Sil'neth," he commanded, his voice carrying just a hint of uncertainty. "Show this human what real speed looks like." The crowd began to murmur with renewed confidence. Of course, Vorthak had been too slow, too predictable. But Sil'neth was different. She was an artist of violence, enhanced with neural accelerators that allowed her to process information at superhuman speeds. Her reflexes were measured in microseconds, her movements too fast for most organic eyes to track. Yes, Lady Zephnina chittered excitedly. Speed and technology. That's what we need. Brute force was obviously the wrong approach. Clearly, agreed Lord Hexturon, though his voice lacked its earlier confidence. The human got lucky with environmental manipulation, but you can't manipulate what you can't see coming. Sil'neth descended into the arena with fluid grace, her forearms moving in perfect synchronization. Each hand held a different weapon, energy blades that hummed with contained force, throwing stars that could home in on targets from across the arena, and neural disruptors that could scramble an opponent's nervous system. Her species, the Veltari, had been assassins for 10,000 years. They'd perfected the art of killing into a science, and then enhanced that science with the finest technology the galaxy could provide. Her neural accelerators allowed her to think and move at speeds that made other species look like they were moving through thick liquid. Little human, Sil'neth's voice was silk over steel. "You have been lucky so far. But luck means nothing when you cannot even see your death coming." Maya stretched casually, rolling her shoulders like she was warming up for a light jog. "You know, everyone keeps saying that. I'm starting to think you guys don't really understand what luck means." "I understand perfectly," Sil'neth replied, her neural accelerators already analyzing Maya's stance, her breathing patterns, her micro-expressions. "Luck is what happens when preparation meets opportunity. And you, little human, are completely unprepared for what I represent." The crowd leaned forward in anticipation. This was more like it. No clumsy charging, no relying on brute force. Just surgical precision and overwhelming speed. Sil'neth moved. To the crowd, she was a blur of motion, her form seeming to teleport from one position to another. Her energy blades carved through the air in perfect arcs, each strike calculated to disable rather than kill. The human would be unconscious within seconds, her nervous system scrambled by the neural disruptors. But something was wrong. Maya wasn't where she was supposed to be. Sil'neth's predictive algorithms had calculated her position perfectly, but the human had moved in a way that made no logical sense. Instead of dodging backward or to the side, she'd moved forward and down, sliding between Sil'neth's legs in a motion that no rational combatant would attempt. What Sil'neth spun around, her accelerated reflexes compensating for the unexpected move. But Maya was already moving again, and this time her motion was even more inexplicable. She was running directly at the arena wall, not away from Sil'neth, not toward cover, but straight at solid metal. Sil'neth's algorithms couldn't process it. There was no tactical advantage to running at a wall, no escape route, no strategic value. It was irrational. It was impossible. It was. Maya hit the wall and kept going. Up. She'd used her momentum to run 3 steps up the vertical surface before gravity pulled her back down. But those 3 steps had been enough to grab one of the arena's light fixtures and swing herself around in a wide arc. That's impossible. Krex Talon's voice cracked. Humans don't have the adhesive pads for wall climbing. They don't have the strength for that kind of acrobatics. Apparently, nobody told her that, Maya called out cheerfully, landing behind Sil'neth with perfect balance. Sil'neth spun around, her neural accelerators working overtime to track the human's position. But Maya was already moving again, this time in a pattern that seemed to follow no logical combat doctrine. She was fighting like she was making it up as she went along, and that was the problem. Sil'neth's combat algorithms were designed to counter known fighting styles, to predict and neutralize established tactics. But Maya wasn't using any established tactics. She was improvising, adapting, creating new moves on the fly. Stand still. Sil'neth hissed, her energy blades weaving complex patterns in the air. Why would I do that? Maya asked, somehow ending up behind her again. You're the one with the fancy speed enhancements. Shouldn't you be fast enough to catch one slow human? The crowd was getting restless again. This wasn't supposed to be a dance performance. Where was the swift, decisive victory they'd been promised? Krex Talon's unease was growing by the second. Two of his champions. Two of the finest warriors in the galaxy. And they were being made to look like fools by a single human who shouldn't have lasted 10 seconds against either of them. Sil'neth's frustration was mounting. Her neural accelerators were overheating from the constant recalculations. Every time she thought she had the human's pattern figured out, Maya would do something completely different. Something that made no tactical sense. In her growing desperation, Sil'neth made a critical error. She threw all four of her homing weapons at once, filling the air with a web of energy blades and neural disruptors, confident that the human couldn't possibly dodge them all. Maya didn't dodge them. Instead, she grabbed one of the gravity generators she'd been using earlier and pulled it loose from its housing. The sudden shift in gravitational forces sent all four weapons spinning wildly off course, their homing systems confused by the gravitational anomalies. The weapons, designed to track and follow their targets, began chasing each other in an increasingly tangled web of energy and metal. Sil'neth, moving too fast to compensate for the sudden change, ran directly into her own weapon web. The neural disruptors fired simultaneously, and Sil'neth's enhanced nervous system, already strained from the overheating accelerators, simply shut down. She collapsed in a tangle of her own weapons, unconscious before she hit the ground. Maya dusted off her hands again and looked up at the stunned crowd. 2 down, she said pleasantly. 1 to go? The betting pools had gone completely insane. Aristocrats were frantically switching their wagers, credits changing hands so fast that the automated systems were struggling to keep up. What had started as easy money was turning into the most expensive lesson in galactic history. This is impossible, Lady Zephnina muttered, her mandibles clicking nervously. Absolutely impossible. 3 species, 3 different combat philosophies, and she's making them all look like amateur gladiators at their first blood sport. Lord Hex Turon had removed his monocle entirely and was polishing it with shaking appendages. Perhaps we should call this off? Declare it a draw? Technical difficulties with the arena equipment. No, Krex Talon's voice was tight with barely controlled panic. No, we have one more. Gorthul has never been defeated. Never. Physical combat means nothing to a psychic warrior. She can't improvise her way out of having her mind crushed. In the champion's alcove, Gorthul raised his bulbous head. His third eye, located in the center of his forehead, pulsed with an inner light that seemed to bend reality around it. The Zephtiri had evolved beyond physical combat entirely. They fought with thoughts, with fear, with the very fabric of consciousness itself. Finally, Gorthul's voice resonated not through the air, but directly into the minds of everyone present. A worthy challenge. The human has physical adaptability, but the mind is where true battles are won and lost. He descended into the arena without fanfare, without weapons, without armor, and he didn't need any of those primitive tools. His bulbous head pulsed with psychic energy, and his third eye fixed on Maya with an intensity that made several spectators faint. Little human, his mental voice pressed against Maya's consciousness like a physical weight, you have surprised us all. But thoughts cannot be dodged. Fear cannot be manipulated with gravity generators. And your mind is about to belong to me. Maya tilted her head, studying him with the same casual interest she'd shown his predecessors. You know, you're right about one thing. Thoughts can't be dodged. But here's the thing about human minds that you might not understand. And what is that? Gorthul's psychic presence pressed harder, beginning to probe the edges of Maya's consciousness. We're really good at not listening to people who think they know better than us. Gorthul's mental assault hit Maya's mind like a tsunami of pure thought. Fear, despair, submission, terror. Every emotion designed to break an opponent's will crashed against her consciousness in waves that should have left her catatonic. And Maya got annoyed. Seriously? She said out loud, her voice carrying clearly across the suddenly silent arena. This is your big, scary psychic attack? Making me feel bad about myself? Do you have any idea how many performance reviews I've sat through? How many times I've been told I'm not good enough, not smart enough, not strong enough? Gorthul's third eye flared brighter. This was impossible. His psychic domination techniques had worked on every species in the galaxy. Fear was universal. Pain was universal. The desire to submit to superior force was hardwired into every intelligent being, except, apparently, humans. You want to know what real mental toughness looks like? Maya continued conversationally, apparently unaffected by the psychic assault that should have reduced her to a gibbering wreck. Try growing up on a planet where everything is actively trying to kill you. Try dealing with gravity that's trying to crush you every single day. Try living in a society where your main form of entertainment is watching people hit each other with sticks while arguing about arbitrary rules. The crowd watched in horrified fascination as their ultimate champion, their psychic warrior, their master of mental domination, began to sweat. Actual perspiration was beading on Gorthul's bulbous forehead as he poured more and more power into his attack. This is impossible, Krex Talon whispered. No mind can resist that level of psychic pressure. No organic brain can withstand that kind of mental assault. Apparently nobody told the human brain that, someone muttered from the stands. Maya was walking toward Gorthul now, still talking in that same casual tone. You know what the really funny thing is? You're trying to break my mind by making me feel hopeless and afraid. But I've spent my entire life on a planet where hopeless and afraid is just Tuesday. You're not showing me anything new. Gorthul's psychic assault reached a crescendo. Every technique, every mental weapon, every consciousness-crushing ability he'd developed over centuries of warfare was focused on this single human female. And she patted him on the head. There, she said gently. You tried really hard. That's what matters. The psychic feedback was instantaneous and catastrophic. Gorthul's mind, stretched to its absolute limit trying to dominate Maya's consciousness, snapped back on itself like a rubber band. His third eye went dark, his bulbous head deflated slightly, and he toppled over backward with a sound like a punctured balloon. The arena fell silent for the third time. Maya looked around at the unconscious forms of three of the galaxy's greatest warriors, then up at the stunned crowd. Well, she said, brushing imaginary dust off her hands, that was educational. Thanks for the workout, everyone. She walked toward the arena exit with the same casual stride she'd entered with, stepping over Gorthul's unconscious form without a second glance. Krex Talon watched her go, his compound eyes wide with a realization that chilled him to his crystalline core. Humans weren't just dangerous because they were unpredictable. They were dangerous because they were absolutely, utterly, completely impossible to break. And there were billions of them. Cancel all expansion plans toward the Sol system, he whispered to his aide. Immediately. Maya Torres disappeared through the exit, leaving three elite warriors folded and not breathing, and an entire galactic civilization reconsidering their position on the food chain,